We're still in 5.1. All right, so we spent our time, last time we were together looking at what a Doggish lene does. Doggish lene, well, that's also called a weak Doggish. What kind of consonants can a Doggish lene go inside of? Only inside Begat-Kafat letters. Okay? That's the only time you ever see them. They're in Begat-Kafat letters. Now, to complicate Hebrew a little bit more, there's another dot that also goes inside consonants, and it is called Doggish Forte. And we talked about that as a strong Doggish, right? Doggish Forte is a strong Doggish. Doggish lene, weak. They are so weak that when they're in the Begat-Kafat letter and a vowel comes right before the Begat-Kafat letter, what will happen to that weak Doggish? It will be blown away like a little dandelion, okay? And off it goes. You won't see it anymore. On the other hand, a Doggish Forte is a Doggish that will stay put even when a vowel sound precedes it. And this is going to be the big clue for knowing when we're looking at a Doggish lene or a Doggish Forte. But first things first, Doggish Forte. What kind of consonants can go inside of can a Doggish Forte go inside of? Ah, very good. They can go inside any consonant except gutturals. Okay? All right. Yes. So that means that we do have to remind ourselves about what constitutes gutturals here, right? So what are the consonants that we typically think of when we think of gutturals? Okay. So Aleph, Ayin, Hey, Chet, and then there's one more called Resh. Okay? I like to refer to these guttural consonants as the guts gang. If you are familiar with the old gangs from the 70s, we used to be really afraid of the Bloods and the Crips, right? Those were the two street gangs that we heard about. I'm sure there were lots more, but you know, being in a sheltered small town in Mississippi, those were the only two gangs we ever knew about. Except for our little neighborhood gang. We called ourselves the Golden Eagles or something like that. And we used to ride our bikes and, you know, wreak havoc in our neighborhood as well. We were the first, probably the first multicultural gang in Long Beach, Mississippi. So we had a half Japanese kid. My brothers and I were half Vietnamese. We had two black kids and a Puerto Rican kid, and then a white kid. So we were multiculturally bad. So anyhow, but we loved one another. We were brothers. So anyhow, the Guts gang, right? So the Guts gang is a gang of Hebrew letters that go around in the Hebrew language wreaking havoc for everybody. They behave badly. The four that constitute the Guts gang, the gutturals gang, are these first four: Aleph, Ayin, Hey, and Chet. Resh is not really a guttural, but Resh wants to be one. So I call Resh a Guts wannabe. Right? He's the pesky little kid that hangs out with the gang and wants to be initiated, but isn't quite bad enough to be in the gang yet. So sometimes Resh behaves like a guttural because he wants to prove his mettle, but he's not a true gut. Okay? None of these can take a Doggish Forte, and that's going to be one of the characteristics of gutturals. There's actually two other characteristics that we'll see, but one thing is for sure: gutturals. And here's the way I like to put it. You know, they've got bad attitudes. They've got a chip on their shoulder. Gutturals don't take no Doggish Forte from anyone. Okay? That's what you got to know about the gutturals. Those guys don't take no Doggish from anyone. And so, when somebody wants to put a Doggish Forte in a guttural, you can't do it. No can do. And that's true for Resh as well as the four true gutturals. Okay? So, remember, Begat-Kafat letters can take a Doggish. And since none of these gutturals are Begat-Kafat letters, then I could see a Doggish lene or a Doggish Forte in a Begat-Kafat letter, couldn't I? I could see them in either one. But what if I had a word like, what if I had a consonant like shin, and I had a Doggish in it? Okay, could you tell me what kind of Doggish that is? Yeah, that would have to be a Doggish Forte. Why? Why wouldn't you say Doggish Lene? Because shin is not a begat-kafat letter. Exactly. So if you know Doggish Lene is always going begat-kafat letters, and you see a Doggish in something besides a begat-kafat letter, ring the bell. It's a Doggish Forte, right? You just know it can't be a Doggish Lene. Very good. What if I see something like this, an ayin with a Doggish in it? What does that tell you?
Somebody messed up.
That tells you somebody messed up. That's right, because you can't put a Doggish Forte in one of those. Could it be a Doggish Lene? No. Couldn't be a Doggish Lene because Doggish Lene only goes in begat-kafat letters, right? Couldn't be a Doggish Forte because Doggish Fortes don't go in gutturals. So it is just some bad spelling. Okay, some first-year student has really messed up here. Okay, so that's what that means. So you won't see that. All right, great. Now, what we want to do is talk about what Doggish Forte does to a consonant. Okay, so first things first, what a Doggish Forte will do, as the grammarians typically speak of it, is a Doggish Forte is going to double the consonant that it's in. Okay, that's the first thing it does. Doggish Forte likes to double a consonant. Now, technically speaking, it's not doubling the consonant. It's just causing you to hold the consonant in your pronunciation longer than normal. But we're going to go ahead and still speak of it as if it were doubled, and because it's going to really help us if we talk that way to understand what's going on here. So imagine a doubled consonant here. All right, let's take the word isha, for example. You've met this word before, haven't you? What does that mean?
Woman.
Woman, and it could also be translated wife. Okay, now. When you look at that shin here, and you see that dot inside of it, what does that dot represent? It's a Doggish Forte, and a Doggish Forte means that the consonant is doubled, right? Do you see two shins here?
No.
No, that's because you're only looking at it with human eyes, okay? What you need is your Hebrew microscope. And if you put a Hebrew microscope on that dot and blew it up real big, guess what you would see? You'd see another sheen. It's a little tiny sheen that looks like a dot because it's so small. Okay, that's what a Doggish Forte is. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But it helps people remember. Okay, so it's the first of the doubled consonants is what the Doggish Forte represents. Okay, and it's as if I could put it this way, it's as if you had ish with a silent shava followed by a second shin with the kamet hey that you see at the end. Okay, we're doubling the consonant, and so really when you blow up your shin, it's really the Doggish Forte is a shin with a silent shava under it. Okay, because that's a closing consonant. I've got two consonants, and the first consonant is closing the syllable with the preceding vowel and consonant, and then it's opening a new syllable with that second consonant that it represents here. Okay, so if you transliterate isha with the Doggish Forte in it here, what's that going to look like? I've got an aleph, a kirik, which is a short I. I've got my shin, which looks like that. I've got my Doggish Forte in it, so I have to have two shins, and then my A with the happy party hat for the kamete, historically long vowel. Do you see how in transliteration there are two shins here, right? There's two. So we're going to transliterate it as if it's doubled. And notice then, what have I got? I've got a consonant, aleph, a vowel, kirik, and the first shin, which is closing the syllable. Second shin is opening a new syllable, right? So I'm going to divide right there. If I were to write the shins literally twice, I'd have to have a silent shava, right? Because silent shava is always marking a closed syllable when it's in the middle of a word. And if I were to divide it, I'd divide it like that. But here's a question for you. What if I really had Isha written this way, and what if I told you, please divide that into syllables? What would you do? Well, let me get a red marker here, and let me divide it right there. Would that be kosher? Would that be okay to divide it just like that?
Well, they're both on the other side.
What's that?
They're both on the other side, both of the sheens.
Yeah, that leaves both sheens on the wrong side of the dividing line. So would I want to do that? Because that would make this an open syllable over here, wouldn't it? But notice that this is really a closed syllable, the ish, right? Yeah, over there, right?
So when you see the sheen, the Forte, that you're supposed to not only transliterate it with two sheens, but treat it like it is two sheens in the Hebrew as well.
Exactly. We're going to treat it like it's a doubled consonant. What if I did this? What if I divided it like that? Would that be okay?
No, because then the vowels by itself.
Okay, good. That's right. My two shins are with the first syllable, right? But it's only the first sheen that closes the first syllable. The second sheen has to go with the kamate. So I can't do that, can I? So what am I going to have you do? Well, yeah, we're going to sort of divide in the middle. What we're going to do is we're going to act like we're going to divide it like we did the first time here. But I'm going to have you swoop over and grab that doubling dot and then come back towards the middle. Okay? So remember, the doubling dot represents the first of the doubled consonants, right? So what I have is the consonant aleph, the vowel kirik, and then the first sheen. And anytime you have a Doggish Forte, then you can always know that you've got a closed syllable on the right side of that dividing line. Okay? And then the second sheen is what you see, the literal sheen, and its vowel here. All right. So let me then point out here, this is number 2, right? Number 1 is that Doggish Forte will will form a doubled consonant. The second thing that you will always know about a Doggish Forte is that it closes one syllable and opens a new syllable. Okay? It's always going to close one syllable, open a new one. Now, the one it closes, of course, is going to be a closed syllable. That's why we can always put a C there. But the one it opens, does it have to be a closed syllable? No, not at all. In fact, look, this one ends with a kamate, which is a vowel, right? So the second syllable is open. All right? Let's take a look at another example of a Doggish Forte. And for now, just assume that Dr. Marshall is correct here, that this word has a Doggish Forte. We'll again talk in a moment about how we know that for sure. But if that's a Doggish Forte, that means I have how many dalits here? I have 2, right? And if I'm going to divide the syllable, I'm going to come down, grab my doubling dot, and continue down, right? So notice, how many vowels do I have? I have 2 pathoks, right? And notice how my dividing line gets to divide those 2 vowels up because each vowel makes up its own syllable. The first vowel has its lead consonant, sheen, right? And it has a closing first dalit. So this is what? Open or closed?
Closed.
It's closed. Very good. And then the second dalit has its vowel pathok and its yod, which is closing it. This is also closed. Very good. Everybody clear on that? So I've got, in both cases, whether it's Isha or Shaddai, right? The the syllable leading up to the Doggish Forte is always closed, because Doggish Forte always closes a syllable. But the syllable that comes after it could be closed or open, right? Eliza.
The Doggish, I don't know, I think I missed you saying it. How do we know again that dollar is a Doggish Forte?
Oh yes, I'll tell you why in just a minute. So I just asked you to trust me on this for now, okay? Trust me that that's a Doggish Forte. All right. Over here, by the way, when I mentioned that this is a doubled consonant, Doggish Forte always doubles the consonant. Also, you're going to pronounce it as a hard consonant, okay? Or if it's a stop consonant, don't make it a fricative, okay? So let me give you an example here. We come back to the word Shaddai. Technically speaking, if I were going to double this dalet and write it out, how would I do it in Hebrew? Well, it would be shad, right, with a silent shava, followed by dai with a Doggish lene here, right? Because I'd have a silent shava, no vocal noise before this begat kafat letter. That means a Doggish lene would happen there. But when I pronounce this, I don't pronounce it shavdai, okay? I'm not going to pronounce that dalet as if it were a fricative, shavdai, okay? I'm going to pronounce them both as if they were hard stop consonants. It's shaddai, shaddai, shaddai. Let me give you another example. This is also one of the words that's used in your book. Again, assuming with me, trusting me on this, that this is a Doggish Forte inside the kaf, right? Since kaf is a begad kafat letter, it could be a lene or a forte, right? Assuming it's a Doggish Forte, you might be tempted to pronounce this as michkol, right? Michkol. But as a matter of fact, it's going to be pronounced michkol, michkol. Both of the kafs will be pronounced as a hard stop consonant. Michkol, like McDonald's. Michkol. All right? So that's how you'll pronounce it. You'll also notice, if you happen to look on page 57 at the transliteration of that word, Michkol, it's transliterated like this. Okay? Do you notice that the first kaf of Michkol does not have a line under it, right? That's true in Ross's transliteration, and it's true in mine here, right? So don't put a line under it. You're going to pronounce that as a hard consonant, if it could have been pronounced like a begat kafat letter does with a vowel before it, would be a fricative. All right, let's see. Here is the last but important thing that you need to know about Doggish Forte. And this is important. Okay, number 3. When Doggish Forte, a consonant with a Doggish Forte, has a shava under it, guess what kind of shava it is? It's vocal shava. Okay, it is a vocal shava. Do not, I repeat, do not treat this as a silent shava. Now here's why this is important. Let's take our sample word from the Ross textbook. Okay, and again, assume with me for a moment that is a Doggish Forte in the dalet. All right. If that's a Doggish Forte, okay, what I've told you is that you're supposed to read the shava as a vocal shava. But let's assume you didn't know that, and I asked you, hey, is that shava silent or vocal? Well, you would do what good Hebrew students do. You would look where to find out if that's silent or vocal? You would look to the right, and you would see what kind of a vowel. Yeah, the vowel is called kyric, right? And a kyric is a short vowel, and therefore you would assume that the shava is silent, right? And if you assume that was a silent shava, you would be, yes, you'd be wrong. You'd be led astray by Dr. Marshall's first rule. Okay, so that rule about looking to the right does not apply when we're dealing with Doggish Forte. All right? In fact, remember when you have a Doggish Forte in a consonant like this, the dot is what equals the first instance of the consonant with what kind of a shava? A silent shava. So let's rewrite this, okay? Shall we? If we rewrite this using our doubled consonants, it's kid, de, shoe, right? So the dalet that you see is this dalet. The dalet that you don't see, because it's the dot, is the first dalet with a, what kind of shava is this? Silent. Remember? It's like I have two shavas side by side. The first one's always silent and the second one's always vocal, right? So you are seeing the vocal shava, not the silent shava here, okay? So always vocalize a shava under a Doggish Forte consonant. Got it? All right. Good. Now, let's go back to the question. How can I tell the difference between a dot in a Begadkefat letter, whether it's a Doggish Lene or a Doggish Forte? Because it could go in either one. Here's what you have to ask yourself. Okay, let's look at Mikol as an example here. I told you to trust me that that's a Doggish Forte. But let's not trust me. Let's say, I believe that's a Doggish Lene. I don't believe Dr. Marshall. Well, what did you learn about Doggish Lenes when a vowel or any vocal noise precedes a consonant with the Doggish Lene in it? Yeah, it gets blown out by the preceding vowel sound. Well, is this Begadkefat letter preceded by a vowel here?
Yes.
It is. So if it were a Doggish Lene, what would the Keurig do to the Doggish Lene? It would blow it out. Is it there? Then it's not a Doggish Lene, is it? It must be a Doggish Forte. This Doggish is so strong that when the winds of the Keurig blow against it, it stays put. It's strong, right? It's like the tree in the hurricane that won't be blown over and that won't be blown down the street. Okay? Take a look at Kid the Shoe over here. Kid the Shoe. Dalet could have been a Doggish Lene or a Doggish Forte, but notice there's a vowel before the dalet and the dot is still there. So it can't be a Lene dot, right? Because Lenes go away with vowels before them. So it's got to be a Doggish Forte. Does that make sense? Look at Shaddai over here. There's a dot. Could be a Doggish Lene or a Doggish Forte because dalet is a Begadkefat letter, but look, there's a vowel before the dalet and the dot is still there. A Lene dot would have gone away. It must be a Doggish Forte. Does that make sense?
Dr. Marshall, will the Doggish Forte ever be word initial, or it'll be...
So that's a good question. So since a Doggish Forte is always closing a syllable and then opening a new one, if you ever see a real Doggish Forte, there's got to be some vowel and consonant before it that it's going to close the syllable with, right?
So there'll never be any confusion of if it's a Lene or a Forte at the beginning.
Right. Now there's going to be one word that we come across where we will see a Doggish Forte at the... There'll be a situation where we'll see Doggish Fortes at the beginning of a word, but in pronunciation it's still going to be pronounced with the word before it, and they'll be read together. Yeah, we'll get to that soon enough. All right, so that's how you can tell the difference between Doggish Lene and Doggish Forte. On page 58, if you go to 5.3, there is a little section called Conjunctive Doggish Forte. Do you all see that? Can you please take your pencil and put an X next to that 5.3 and skip it? We will not spend any time thinking about conjunctive Doggish Fortes. You don't really need to know about that at all. Okay? Not important for our class. All right. But now 5.4 is important. 5.4 has to do with something called a mapeak. What is a mapeak? It is a dot. Oh my goodness, we've already learned two kinds of dots? Yes, and just when you thought it was safe, there's three, okay? So this is a dot that goes in a hey at the end of a word. Okay? And when that hey is at the end of a word and it has a dot, that dot is called mapeak, and it's telling you that the hey is a consonant. Okay? It's telling you to read the hey as a consonant, not a mater hey, not a vowel marking hey. All right? So we've been seeing situations where we have a word like this, malka, which means queen in Hebrew, and that comments hey at the end. That whole thing is one historically long vowel, right? That's a vowel. And that means that this syllable is an open syllable, right? But if I take a word like malka, and it's spelled this way, with the dot in the hey, the only vowel is the commence. The hey with the mapeak in it is a consonant. So this is, it's closed, right? It's a closed syllable. Just to complete the everything, we'll divide our, this is silent Shiva here, so. Malka versus malka. You won't really hear that real consonant hey because it's hard to hear. And you guys are hard of hearing too, so. No, I'm just kidding. So there you go, right? Open versus closed. The hey's a real consonant, so it's consonant, vowel, consonant, closed syllable. So mapeak will tell you that you've got a final hey that's a real consonant. Okay. Oh, by the way, malka, this first one is queen, right? Malka, like this, is her king. So even though they almost sound identical, they're spelled differently and they do mean different things. Yes?
Why does the second word lose the Doggish in the
Oh, it doesn't. It's supposed to have one there. Sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, great.